Well, for his reaction to the Fox Business interview, we are going to bring in Trump campaign senior strategist Sam Clovis. Sam, great to see you.
Well, great to be on with you, Deidre. Appreciate it.
So what do you think? My colleague Blake Berman sitting right beside me here. He did that fantastic interview with Lewandowski. This is a big push forward, a big move forward, right, for the Trump campaign. Now there can be 100% focus.
Well, I think so, and I think, that it speaks to the character of Mr. Trump, which is what the American people have recognized, and that he is loyal to the people that work for him, and the people that work for him are very loyal to him.
Okay, now two important publications have come out in the past 24 hours that affect the Trump campaign. So the first is that Donald Trump published an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal asking Americans if the system is working for them. And of course, the subheadline, "No wonder voters demand change." Second publication, RNC releasing a memo to all candidates with the rules for how delegates will be chosen for the Republican National Convention. So, Sam, I want to start with the rules first, because Trump has been saying that the RNC system is rigged against him. Do you think that the rules being made public should quell this concern?
Well, I think that the big issue is it exposes a lot of what goes on inside the primary system in both parties. We have caucuses, we have primaries, we also have, really the establishment people picking delegates inside of the closed rooms. And I mean, and every state has a different set of rules. Every state has a different system. This is allowed by the RNC. But I think what it goes to is that the primary system we have in this country probably needs an examination. We've gone out and collected 8.5 million votes. We're well on our way to the 1237 for the delegates. And what we think is important is the American people, particularly the Republicans that are voting in these primaries, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents in the open primaries, should have their say, and it should be the people who select these candidates, and this is the way this process ought to work. Well, and we ought to think there ought to be some leveling out along the way here.
Well, even the RNC, that we had somebody on from the Rules Committee saying, yes, essentially these rules are archaic, for which I want to ask you, Politico actually just posting this, the RNC may debate this proposal next week. There is, of course, this spring meeting in Hollywood, Florida. And on the table to be discussed is this idea of giving the delegates a little bit more power. So just to be clear, this is not decided. It's something that's going to be discussed next week. But if that were to happen, how would you feel about that?
Well, I think if the RNC is going to move, they're going to change the rules before the convention, which I think was very ill-advised. I think that if they're going to do it, now's the time to do it, because they have, a couple of months to absorb the storm that'll come out of that. I think what they probably ought to do is have the discussion. And in the Rules Committee, they will have the discussion, because this goes on all the time in the RNC rules meetings. They sit down and they discuss different options. They take a look at who's first in the nation. They have the carve-outs. They look at the penalties for jumping the line, a lot of these issues. But I think what really is in question here is the evenness and the levelness of the primary system. And are the American people, are the Republicans, are the voters getting the opportunity to have a significant enough say in this process, or is this still an archaic system that's held by the power brokers inside the party in the various states? That's really the question.
So, Sam, I want to ask you another question. I just want to show our viewers something that's going on right now, and this is a protest on behalf of Donald Trump. This is happening right now in Denver, Colorado, so not a huge group of people, but certainly a few, maybe about 100 there, protesting on behalf of Donald Trump. But let me get back, Sam, to what you were saying. If delegates were more empowered, that is to say, if this comes to pass where they are, quote-unquote, unbound in some cases, do you think that would help Donald Trump?
No, I don't think that the unbinding of the delegates is really the issue. I think that what we ought to have is a consistent process that at least through the first or second ballot, at least through the first ballot, that a person that does well in a particular primary state selects, and we have a system that's even across all the states, that those delegates are bound in that first ballot. Because if you release the delegates, there's no point in having primaries or caucuses, because that's the relevant point here. Is that if you unbound, this has been one of the big issues that happened in 12. If you'll remember, we had some rogue states out there, and mine in particular, Iowa, where we had a particular movement of a particular candidate that came in.
Dr. Ron Paul, you can say it, Sam.
Followed the rules, and they ended up with 22 of the 28 delegates, and that's how they voted when the roll call was taken. They voted even though they did not reflect at all the caucus outcomes. So I think that before you start playing fast and loose with allowing the delegates, to Nevada freestyle or whatever the term is, let's make sure that the people who go out and go through this primary process are rewarded for putting out their time and energy and money. In our case, it's our candidates' money, to make sure that we have the opportunity to have those votes reflected appropriately, at least through that first ballot.
Well, a fair point indeed, Sam. And in fact, Dr. Ron Paul was on our show last night just saying, I won Iowa. Nobody knows that. Nobody paid attention, and nobody cared at the time. And he shares your view that reform would be a good thing. Sam Clovis, thank you.
Thanks, Deidre.